Welcome to the Rock Your Comeback podcast. I'm Nicole Eaton, author of the books Rock Your Soul and Rock Your Comeback, as well as an intuitive therapist, and I'm here to remind you of your power. This podcast focuses on mindset and inviting the universe in to create a life that feels so good, so aligned, and so authentic. I hope you're ready. Welcome back to the Rock Your Comeback podcast. We're officially in a new year, and I'm so ecstatic to bring this guest today. Her name is Samantha Blossom. She is a manifestation mentor, and she has just the most bubbly, brilliant light. And I think you guys are going to fall in love with her. So I'm so excited to have you, Samantha. Welcome.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me, Nicole. I'm so excited. I know we've been chatting about this for a while, so it's like coming to fruition, and my birthday week, so it's all perfect.
And your birthday. Oh, I think I'm like one of those people who celebrates my birthday for a month. So
okay, perfect.
We love a celebration over here. Okay. We love any reason to celebrate and to be in a good mood.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And I usually celebrate the week, but maybe I'll do the month this year.
You got to commit to the whole thing. The whole month is for you. That's the energy. So when we talk like manifestation mentor, what does that title mean? What do you do?
Yeah, so it's fascinating, but it's like everything's energy and everything's energetic. So whether that's like, I've helped women have like almost pain-free deliveries, like I've helped them through like the whole process of like conceiving, like they weren't even able to conceive or they tried IVF, so I've supported them in that way. I support women with like going from like $20,000 months to $100,000 months, but it's just like all of it is, it's fascinating when it comes down to it's like all the same thing. But, it's kind of like I had to master like Chinese medicine and all these different realms of just like, of the world, like my undergrads in biochem, like just seeing the world from all these different perspectives and then coming to like, oh, it doesn't matter what you create. It all comes from like the same like consciousness, the same energy field.
Did you say you have an undergrad in biochem?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is where I love these conversations because I always like to know how somebody who has an undergrad in biochem ends up in the world of like energetics where you're helping people have pain-free deliveries or conceive when maybe they couldn't. How did we get here?
Well, what's great? The biochemistry undergrad like really helps me to observe on the molecular level, so like when I work with a client, like I see on like a cellular level, it's so easy for me, but I think it's because I have that background that I can like actually do that. And so my undergrad's in biochem because my mom was like, what if you want to do med school? You should do all your pre-med stuff. So that was just like backup. But I always knew I wanted to do Chinese medicine. So I went to Shanghai, China and studied like acupuncture and herbal medicine and Chinese medicine for like 6 years. And
When
then
did you went from studying Chinese medicine? I actually like have just started dabbling in the ideas of acupuncture. I have like gotten so much better, but I had such a phobia of needles for the longest time. So the thought of acupuncture, like, why would I ever stick any needles in my person? I know people are like, you can't really feel them, but I've just started getting curious. So I'm wondering what you've learned about it.
Yeah. So in like the ancient Chinese, like, medicine scriptures, they talk about there's like, it's like herbal medicine, acupuncture, and then above that is just working with the chi field. And so I feel like that's where I'm at. I just work with the chi field. But even for me, like I've stuck needles that were like, people can't see. I was like this long, maybe, I don't know, 6-7 inches, like all the way up the spine. Like, and I was just like, I don't want to do that anymore. I was just like,
sounds so scary.
yeah. Like, but once I found Body Talk, I was like, okay, I love the needles and I'm done with the needles,
I always like to see people's like progression with it. And I think that's like one of my favorite things about intuition in general is that sometimes we're guided to something that isn't what we'll end up doing, but is a huge, massive part of what we do. And I think that's a good reminder to anybody listening that if you're not thrilled with the destination you're at currently, even though you felt called to go there, it doesn't mean that that's the stopping place.
Yeah, it's actually really funny because I like not like dropped out, but like a month before I was going to graduate, like I had one more exam. I had this meditation. I woke up, I'm like, I'm done with this. Like, I'm not going to finish this degree. And my teachers were like, what? Why? You have literally one easy exam. And I was like, this is going to be in my book one day. And it is my book. It's like, it's just been in my book. Cause I was like, if you know you're not meant to continue on a journey, you get to just like leave at any point, and start something new. But what is great about learning acupuncture was like, now I can like observe the acupuncture point, like in the body. And I can see like the speed, the spin, the flow. Is it open? Is it closed? Like, and so that's how I work with it. And it is kind of fascinating that it's like all these pieces like led me to do the work that I do. And if I didn't take those steps, like I wouldn't be as efficient in what I do now. I wouldn't be as fast. I wouldn't be able to observe like a body in that way.
I think there's probably a lot of people listening who have had that experience of being in that test and being like, this is not the right place for me. This is not the right job for me. And just knowing that, and maybe don't have that ability or haven't found that inner reserve to say, okay, I'm done here. I'm curious for someone in those positions, how can you guide them? What advice do you have?
I think the thing is like the universe is always going to hold you. Like you're always safe. And that kind of brings us to like what I wanted to talk about today was what like making decisions from love versus fear. So like I knew if I tried to continue that route, like it would have been based on fear for me. It would have been like, well, I started this journey, I got to finish it, I got to keep going. Versus like love was like my spirit's like, there's a different world. There's another route. And that is fascinating about how spirit works. It's like the fastest, most efficient route, but it's not like logical. It doesn't make sense. And that's the trust fall, I think. But if you can have emotional mastery and you can understand your body and you can understand like love and you can radiate that, I really feel like when you radiate love, it like protects you so much because it kind of guides you to the next thing.
What about for people who like make that big leap and then they step into fear? So maybe they do something out of love, but then they get there and they're like, shit, what did I do?
Oh, I think that's normal and that's gonna like always happen. And so that's why like having these tools to be like, whoa, I just like did the biggest trust fall. And then like what are the tools to like get you back to like, okay, but actually like in this moment, I'm really safe. I have family, I have support. Like you kind of just focus on everything that like is really working well and you just move into love like 51% of the time of like, and then it is really fascinating. Like the world will just start to like change the story for you. Like I have a story for this if you're
Oh, I
interested.
love a story. Let's hear it.
So yeah, so that did happen to me. Like I came back from Shanghai and I moved back home and I'm like, oh my gosh, like in Shanghai, I was like interviewed for magazine articles. Like I was like really like lit there. People knew me. I had clients left and right. And then when I came back to Vancouver, Washington, a small little town like above Portland, Oregon, I was like, nobody knows me. I have zero clients. Like, oh my gosh. And like my mom was like, this is because you dropped out of school, like
Always the moms.
yeah, she was like pretty harsh with her words. So every day I had to like face that. And then like I think it was a couple months in, and one day I was like, all day I just played with, and what if I was successful? And I was like, what if I'm successful now? Like all day I just like played with this thought. And it was so fast. It was like that night, my friend's like lawyer friend was like, hey, do you want to be my eye candy for this event? So I went to this networking event. I met like all these new friends, new clients. Like it was like overnight by just like one full day where I was like just vibrating at like, what if I'm successful now?
Ooh, I like that. What if I'm successful now? Because I think our natural thought, and especially when we have people around us who are feeding us those messages of like, what did you just do? And this is a repercussion of your choices because you didn't do what you were supposed to or what you should do. Um, Overcoming those voices of fear, especially when they're outside of ourself. I mean, definitely when they're inside of ourself, but then when we have the whole external support system that's affirming that we made the wrong choice or that it's going to go bad, how did you get back in your power to find belief in what you were saying for yourself or to get curious about it? To hold that energy, I think is really what I'm asking.
Yeah, so I feel like holding that energy is okay, here, imagine this, like you're a broadcasting station, right? And so inside when you're like, I love, I love, I love, I love, like then you're emitting that love and the universe just mirrors that love back to you. And when you can, it's like all throughout the day, something's probably going to happen, a conversation, an email, and then you're like, "Oop," and you just get to like slow down a little bit and like relax and breathe and come back to that love again. And when you're in that love, before the call, I was telling Nicole, I was like, love is like flow. It's like openness, like your heart is open, your meridians are open. It's not like love, like on a Hallmark card or like hearts on Valentine's Day. It's like it's an actual frequency, it's a very high frequency. And in that book, Power versus Force, it's like at 500, you know? And so when you're at that vibration, you become magnetic to really good things. And so, but when we're in fear, we drop down. So anything at like 200, which is courage or above, we're in creation mode. Anything below that, we're in destruction mode. So we want to just like find the way to like maintain ourselves to like get into that space. Ooh, the lighting. And then like,
You're just glowing while you talk.
the sun just goes, yes. And then it's like, so when you can like tune your whole system into that love, then it's like, then you give space for the universe to send you miracles, right? And miracles are actually like the natural way of life, but we have been trained to like shut it off and make things more complicated. And so when we can just like allow the ease of life, and the ease of life is like, the universe is like, there's water, there's food, there's everything, you know? And it's like when we can just like trust that, then it kind of all just comes in.
This is so good. And for anybody who's not sure what she's talking about when it comes to like the numbers, that you can actually measure frequency. You can measure frequency. And I love what you said about the destruction versus being in that creative. I talk about that a lot in Rock Your Comeback of being either in survival mode or creative, but I actually think it's more powerful to just word it as am I going into destruction mode? Because truly, like, I talk a lot about worrying as a negative manifestation of, when you're worried about somebody, you're just negatively manifesting. You're getting some energy going in a way of, negatively daydreaming and feeding into that instead of envisioning what you desire. And so I think I like that word of just I don't like the word destruction, but you get what I'm saying.
Right.
I like labeling it that for people who can catch themselves going down that hole so they're not going into that energy that feels heavy. Because when we're talking about fear, you were talking earlier about constriction. And I think that's true is when I feel afraid, I know that I start feeling like nothing can help.
Yeah.
Nobody can help. I can't get out of this. It's like a trapped feeling. And that's almost like if you were like to shut yourself into a cocoon and then try to receive things through the walls. Like it's going to be a lot harder to do that until you burst back out. So I love all of this. This is amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is kind of fascinating, but like our society is not actually very love-based. I can't remember which podcast I heard, but they said these one simple words that were like, our planet is like at the infancy of love. And it was like, ding, it was like, oh my gosh, like I just comprehended that for whatever reason, you know? And and then I was just like, oh my gosh, so that's why it's such a work for all of us, like, coaches and manifestation mentors and oracles and all the things out there. And it's just like it is like the greatest work. We're shifting our operating system from fear to love. It's like a lot. And just like you were talking about the survival thing, it's like if we vibrate at need, we're only going to create more need. And it's as simple as that. It's just like quantum mechanics.
I have this practice that anytime I'm feeling like a little bit off, I'll just sit and I'll just get out a pen and paper and list everything I love, like all of the things I can think of, whether it's just simple things like a really blue sky or like a 70-degree day or playing this one specific game with my daughter. And I'll just sit there and I will pour like 5 to 10 minutes just into this practice of listing everything I love. And it sounds really silly, but every single time that shifts me into such a better state and into a more grateful state than I was before.
Absolutely. And I think like, I feel like in general, when groups come together, they're like, oh, and they kind of talk about their problems or they gossip or, that just tends to be like the trend, which it does create like a buzz feeling. And I think it can be confused with like, okay, this is a kind of body high, but that's like not love, and that's like, even in my mastermind, I'm like, we're so clear about staying in that frequency of love. And we'll be like, okay, there's this one thing we're working on. We're going to rainbow light it, resolve this. But like, for the most part, it's like we're focused on positive fuel. What's the positive emotion that we can get here and bring here and like add to. And when you do that on a daily basis and that starts to compound, like that's like a really beautiful like experience, and I can't wait until like the planet like gets on board. We're all going to be like on cloud nine.
I think it's these conversations though that give people that gateway idea to shift out of the infancy, right? Is to get more people involved in doing it into a way and stepping into love in a way that feels doable. Because I think when you're so programmed to fear, or you grew up in a household that's like really fear-based, or, when you have that baseline of just, I worry, or that's what I do. And for my mom, like specifically, she believes worry is how she shows love. Like
Right.
if she's giving you love, it's because she's worrying about all these bad things happening to you. And so I've had to really like sit down and have conversations of like, please stop please stop. If you want to envision like a bubble of light around me, you can, if you're concerned about something. But it's wild that the ways we're programmed, or even the people we're surrounding, even when you were talking about your mom, that it may not be the natural state for a lot of people. But I love that you were talking about, as you practice it and create a daily practice, that you can compound it. What are your daily practices that you do to step into this energy?
So, yeah. So in the morning, I like to write my desired reality. It really helps me focus like on a day-to-day thing. I'm kind of in a space where I'm like, okay, I make money daily. I mean, this is just my world. And so when I focus on that, it's almost like I'm reprogramming myself every morning. So I write my desired reality. I play like my favorite music and I like dance to like, I like feel like that version of me like is me. And then every couple hours, like I check in and I'm like, all right, is it time to like tune back up? And I do my best to always just like speak into my mastermind, talk to my clients like after I'm charged up. Like when I'm in a trigger state, I do my best not to communicate. If I'm not like in my highest, like if I haven't tuned up my vehicle, I try not to like emit frequency out. Like, so I try not to write posts and stuff. Sometimes like, I think it's just like, I'm not aware of it. I maybe like, I'm like, oh, I'm not like full there. And I
Yeah.
like, and I just do it anyways, but I do my best to, to like kind of tune myself up and get to that high frequency energy. And, like if I'm sending a text, if I'm sending an email, like I cultivate this like feeling of love. So I'm like transmitting that. And so that is like what is coming back to me more often of the time.
Now, one of the things that you have as a free offer to anybody listening is a course called Pleasure to Riches, which sounds incredible. Can you talk about that for a moment?
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially it's just like, I think so many people have stress around money and they have these like negative images or thoughts. And I feel like there's like happy money and then there's like fear-based money, and I think they create very different things in your reality. And so a lot of my work has been based on like happy money. So it's like feel like I have people that are like, oh my gosh, I'm paying you this, but I feel so happy just paying you. So it's like So I've like really been like working on like that change in that conversation of like, oh my gosh, like I'm so excited that I like get to pay for groceries and like doing it in a powerful way. And then knowing like the universe always like cycles things back. So when we circulate, we're like, boom, love, and then circles back. But if we're like, I spend and then it's gone, then it's like you're giving the command like I spend and then it's gone. But if you give the command of like, oh, I'm gonna spend and like awesome stuff's gonna come back, then like that's the command. So there's just like a lot of little things like that in there.
Um, I love the mantra, everything that I spend returns to me tenfold. I've been saying this for probably the last 5 years. And so I can get super excited about paying like the water bill. Like, just those simple things that I feel like I was like, oh wow, like if I dropped 3,000 on this, imagine that coming back to me tenfold. I mean, that's $30,000 that just for spending this amount, it just circles back. I have a question though, because I know a lot of people have especially when we're talking about energy of abundance and money,
Yeah.
have people in their lives or their spouses who aren't on the same energy frequency. So you'll see, I work a lot with women. I'll see women who start to do that process of getting really good in their alignment, really juicy in their like love frequency. And then their husband comes home and has a lot of negativity about money. How do you account for relationships when it comes to both energy and abundance?
Yeah. So I would say, because like there's a book called Existential Kink, and it kind of talks about like why we kind of manifest these like negative experiences. Like life is the full spectrum, it's light and dark. I think a really simple thing to do is like, I love and accept this too. So it's like maybe the guy comes in, he says whatever, and you stay in your frequency and you kind of like observe it and it's like not hitting you. So essentially like you're giving that person freedom to like fully express themselves. And you're not saying like, oh, because he's expressing that world, so now I'm going to take that in. Instead, you're just saying like, that's so adorable. Like he gets to like play in his
Aw.
world. I love that for you. Like you stay in your happiness. You don't just like take the words on like and respond to it. So instead you're just like, okay, I love and accept this too. And you're like in your world, and then you can kind of then communicate like, okay, well, would you like to understand my perspective? You know what I mean? Like you can slowly start to like adjust them to. It is fascinating for me. For some reason, a lot of times when I'm coaching women, the first thing is the men start to make more money. All of a sudden, the men have taken these concepts and they get it because like they're not as like emotionally up and down. And so it's almost like they stabilize first and then the woman, like, I don't know why that happens for me a lot of times. So it's
Yeah.
fascinating to like see. It's nice to hear your perspective of like, she's updated, but he isn't.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's interesting because when you're in a partnership and you're sharing, energetic frequency with somebody, it's how do you stay in your energy and not take on theirs and not, take on not only the stories, but just that stress or whatever other people are coming home with.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I think that's like, if they do write their journal prompts in the morning, they can start to write that like my body doesn't take on other people's like emotions. Like I really strong in my love and like my aura is like really resilient, and just like coding themselves and like instructing that every day. I think in general, like women have been like, oh, I will just take on all this karma for the guy, and that has been like for I think like lots of like lifetimes. So it's like an auto thing. So we get to like readjust that and just being like, this life force energy is like for me. Like I'm not like giving my life force energy away to this person or like respond, especially like with sex too. It's like when you have sex, the energy like melds like this. And so you just have little practices of like before sex and after sex, like little energy techniques to make sure like your energy field like returns back. So you're not taking on as much of I mean, I can't say you're not taking on any of it, but I think it starts to lessen as you do some like energy hygiene techniques.
I love that you use the word encoding, talking about just my aura is resilient and just embedding that belief into your energy field, into yourself, because I think that especially for people who are like new to spirituality. There's a lot in spirituality about, oh, you're an empath. That just means you take on everything. And like nobody's talking a ton about how do we keep our energy separate so we're not taking on everything. And I think actually I've been talking a lot about this with my husband, is like I feel like there's so much in spirituality that can very easily get misconstrued or not completed with the same thought or intention. So I love that you talked about, here's a way to keep that energy yours. Here's a way to keep your love and your love frequency, and being fully and wholly responsible for encoding new beliefs and new energy. I think that's going to help a lot of people.
Yeah, I think it's kind of bum because I think that traditionally spirituality has a lot of like suffering codes in it, and it's not truth. It's just like how people perceived spirituality then, and that's like embedded in a lot of like, you know, just like how we've been raised in but like I think I mean, I don't think life there's like, it's not like there's good or bad. It's more like here's the whole buffet of life, and like what do you choose? And it's like how do you get your frequency tuned up so you're actually choosing like this slice of the pie, in a way. And so yeah, it is kind of fascinating. I do feel like there are a lot of spiritual beliefs that like aren't necessarily like accurate anymore, and maybe they're like outdated, and it does slow a lot of people down, unfortunately. And that was part of why I started teaching money, because I was like, oh my god, all these beautiful amazing energy healers, and they're not making any money. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, like how do we get their workout, so that was kind of like where I first started.
Speaking of that, I'm curious your thoughts on like shadow work. I have my own opinions, but I'm curious, like based on that kind of ideology, what your thoughts on that are.
Yeah, I feel like some people can be too obsessed with it. And then it's like you're calling more of it into your, like, here's the thing. It's like there's so much depth. It's like you can keep digging. Like there's always going to be more shadow. You know what I mean? Just like there's always going to be more light. And so I feel like it's more like, okay, how do we like stay in this like love and like move forward? And then when the shadow pops up, we like deeply address it, but we're not kind of like picking at it, if it makes sense.
100%. I used to do traditional mental health counseling, and I stopped doing traditional mental health counseling because I started to learn energetics, and I realized that taking people back into trauma was sometimes necessary and helpful, but most times not necessary and helpful. It was undoing the energy in the system at the time so they can move forward, not diving so deep into it backwards. And I kind of regret some of the things that I was taught and utilized during those early years of being a therapist because of what I know now.
Oh, totally. And I think we're always going to be evolving. So I think the way I look at it now is like, okay, let's look at this event. Here's the trauma, but look around, look at all the things you get to be grateful for, and like helping them to see, like, yes, that one tiny event wasn't great, but like at that same time, someone in Paris was having coffee and like, and their house was great. And like, just like helping them to observe that event, but then seeing like all the blessings around it, and it kind of softens the energy, and then they can like kind of unpack this and see what was the wisdom from this, like what were they meant to like learn. And then I find a lot of times that emotion just like resolves. Like a huge one happened yesterday for one of my clients, and we were both like, yes, because she'd had this like neck discomfort for a while. And then we were like, what if she saw her like ex-husband as like this, like, okay, imagine this like high frequency light being came in this three-dimensional body, had to play like the like not nice person so that she could rise in her power. And like when she was able to like observe that, it was like like everything just like opened up. So I think it's just like there's so many tools now, and there's different ways to like I think address those pieces.
Yeah, I've had a couple of people have come to me after doing like shadow work for a long period of time, and they're like, "Well, I've done all the shadow work and I'm still not feeling better." And I'm like, "Because you've lived in the shadow for the last 3 years, honey. Like, well, that's nobody can live there for that long and feel positive. I mean, we definitely have to unpack exactly how you said." And so, I love this conversation, Samantha. I think it's going to be helpful for so many people. Are there any other like little techniques that people can try throughout the day to continue to access that frequency of love, especially if they're noticing fear creep in?
Yeah. Let's see. So I think music's really powerful, breathing's really powerful, journaling's really powerful, but really like I think for me, I almost feel like I'm like I sit and I can feel like an openness. Like I feel like I'm like unwinding my body a little bit and I'm like breathing and then like I can feel my heart open and I can feel my nervous system open and I can just feel like I'm just like sending so much love into my day. And the moment that I get into contraction, I kind of journal out like, okay, well, what's the thought behind this? Like, what am I actually thinking? And then I prove to myself, like, oh, that isn't actually true. Like that's
Yeah.
not real, you know?
Yeah.
And then it's just kind of like it just keeps like unwinding. So that's kind of what I do. Now, what are your techniques?
No, those are amazing. I mean, I always start my day. I think it's really cute that we both start our day with like I script my day out.
Yeah.
I pre-plan every day for the last decade. I have pre-planned my day, how I'm going to feel, how I'm going to carry myself through it. And I'm really big on tuning into my energy throughout the day. Like the amount of times I take an Epsom salt while I'm editing a podcast, just because I like to relax while I work. Like work for me is fun and playful, and I can't believe that anybody pays me to do this, but it's so exciting that they do. And so yeah, I for me it's really a practice of deciding in the morning how I want my day to go and feel, and then really creating practices throughout the day and just noticing. I'm a mom of two, like I run two businesses, and so I've I'm moving. I have a lot of things that are pulling my attention at all times. And if I don't tune back in, I will get lost in that. And I know that about myself. So I'm very intentional. And you kind of use the analogy earlier about like a car tune up. And it's so funny because that's so true. I mean, we take our car to get things tuned up and checked in, but we could run ourselves forever on E and not, stop by the gas station. So yeah, just those intentional moments throughout the day have been really massive for me to just make sure that I'm not diving into a programming that doesn't feel good and serve me. Especially because my kids get home at 3 o'clock and 4 o'clock, and I want to like be able to do my work day, feel fulfilled in my work day, and then also be present and excited for them to be home and not feel like, oh God, just another thing to do. That's so important to me in my relationship with my kids.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's number one, right? I mean, it's like your family's
Yeah.
kind of like number one, and it's like, I mean, it just is that way. So
I love this conversation. I know people are going to want to reach out to you and get your course, which they can find in the show notes. So you'll get free access to Samantha's Pleasure to Riches course. But where else can they connect with you and work with you?
SamanthaBlossom.com. That's my website. So they can kind of read some testimonials if they want. They can always just email me, love@SamanthaBlossom.com, and ask me some questions or find me on Instagram, Samantha Love Blossom. They can DM me all the things.
Perfect. Well, thank you so, so much for stopping by. And like I said, reach out to her, connect with her. You're going to want to just hang out in her energy because it's so fun and so bubbly. And she's going to teach you exactly how to make that a reality for yourself too. So thanks again.
Thanks, Nicole. You're amazing.
Thanks for listening. Make sure to get a copy of my latest book, Rock Your Comeback, The Down to Earth Guide to Reclaiming Your Power, just about everywhere books are sold. Join the Comeback Club for exclusive access, masterclasses, and more. And I always love to know what you think, so make sure to shoot me a DM or leave me a review. Thanks for listening to the Rock Your Comeback podcast. I hope you're feeling inspired, motivated, and ready to take on the world. Now go step back into your power. The world's been waiting for you. But first, if you could, leave me a review or share with a friend. Thank you.